Welcome to M.E.S.H. My name is Pamela Brewer, and I'm going to be here with you every week to talk about your mental, emotional, and social health because that's all in play every single day, all day long. We don't think about it, but it's true. Let me remind you one more thing. The best possible way to get yourself into relationship trouble is to assume someone else can read your mind and that you can read theirs. It's the swiftest way possible to get yourself into an exhausting communications merry-go-round without anybody having a good time. What should you do instead? Ask questions. My name is Pamela Brewer, and I'll be back in just a second, and I'll be asking questions. Hi, everyone. This is Pamela Brewer again, and I am really happy to introduce you to today's guest. But before I do that, I want to remind you again that it is never your job to read somebody else's mind. It is never their job to read yours. And how do we avoid that? By asking questions. It's a great way to really keep both of you out of trouble. But let me say hello to Helen Winslow Black. Helen Winslow Black is the author of really an amazing new book. Helen, hello. Tell us about your book. Welcome. I'm delighted to have you. And I'm delighted that you've written about such an important, unfortunately, important,
Yes, yes,
big, broad topic.
yes. Hi, Pamela, and thank you so much for having me on. And hello to everybody that is watching this when they will be watching this. Seven Blackbirds is a novel about a young woman who finds, unfortunately, that her husband of several years becomes abusive after the birth of their first child. So she realizes the marriage is shattered and she files for divorce. And the book follows the twin threads of her going through her journey through abuse recovery as well as her journey through the legal system. And ultimately, it's has a positive ending. It's an uplifting book. There's lots of ups and downs. There's humor in it. There's tears in it. But she ultimately realizes that in order to achieve the divorce and more importantly, do the emotional healing, she has to find her own voice,
Absolutely.
which she
And,
does.
one of the things that I was so pleased about is the uplifting ending because, as you and I know much too well, when you find yourself in a violent relationship, not only are you dealing with the violence of the moment, emotional, physical, social, financial, sexual, the whole nine yards, but
Mhm.
when it's time for you to leave, you're afraid to leave because you think there is no hope in leaving. And often you think that way because of sometimes family and friends unknowingly, but certainly because of the abuser. So let me ask you, first of all, there's so many people who say, well, why did she even get? Let me back up. Let me acknowledge that both men and women are abused.
Mhm.
I think it's important to recognize that very often it is women. Unfortunately, the gap is getting smaller than it used to be. I think, Helen, that's a whole different conversation. But now let me go back and repeat my initial
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Why don't women leave? How do they know? How does this guy go from amazing to awful? How does that happen?
Well, sometimes a woman will allow herself to get into a relationship that's abusive because she's not recognizing the really subtle signs of bullying behavior. Other times, there's a trigger event in the lifespan of the relationship, and someone seems to snap. And it's important to remember that an instance of abuse is is a reaction. It's not a response, it's impulsive, and it has to be based on trauma. But you're not there to heal the other person's trauma. You have to take care of yourself. Oh, I forgot what the question was again. Could you remind me?
No, because you are doing just fine.
I'm just going off, you know.
And
Creative artist.
honestly, it's so important.
Oh, I know.
This
Oh, I
notion
didn't
of,
say.
yes, there's been trauma, but you're
Mhm.
not responsible for the other person's trauma. How many times, I mean, certainly as a therapist, I can't tell you how many times
Oh,
I've heard, this is what happened to him. It's not really his fault. And I really need to sort of grin and bear it. Um, it Yes, please.
Pamela, I am passionate about this. Okay, first, there's two layers here. Uh, you have intrinsic worth. You were born with it. No one can take it away. If you allow someone to not allow, that's a funny use of the word, but if someone abuses you
Mhm.
and you take it, an act of abuse is an affirmation that you are an object and
Yeah.
you are a worthless object. And
Yes.
if you accept that, you're giving away yourself. People talk about your power. You're giving away your soul. And that comes from someplace long ago and far away, and it's very deep because it's not natural. It's
Right.
not natural for you to give that away. So there's a big element of social conditioning for women, and
Absolutely.
I think it's still there, Pamela, that we are supposed to be the peacemakers, that we are
Absolutely.
supposed to accommodate, that we're the ones taking care of the household. We can fix things, and that's why I think women across the socioeconomic spectrum, across every spectrum possible, and men, that is why a grown woman will accept behavior in an intimate relationship
Yeah.
that she would never accept at work, at home, in public. It's
Absolutely.
it's
And
it's all
y- you
yeah.
said something. Forgive me for interrupting you. I do it all the time. I'm okay with
You
it. I
did.
hope you are. Me too. Excellent. You used the word allow and then you sort of backed off of it. And I'm so glad because how many times have I heard, well, she allowed him to do it. Why did she allow him to do it? She must have been okay with it. Talk about the concept of allow in a violent
You
relationship,
know,
if you would.
that kind of reaction steams me because talk about lack of empathy.
Yeah.
Talk
Absolutely.
about lack of empathy. Um, Sometimes things creep up on you.
Right.
You know, relate. It depends on how old you were when the relationship started. Is this somebody you married when you were 18 and you were different people and that you evolved, or is this someone? Relationships evolve, and when something untoward happens, our natural reaction, especially if it's something shocking, is to push it away.
That's right.
You could probably speak better to this because you're a trained professional, but you shove it aside and you go into denial mode,
Right.
and things can just kind of creep up on you. So somebody who says, well, how could she not have seen that, or
Right.
it's just what all they're saying is that they've never been in that situation, and so denial is really it's like a self-defense mechanism, but it can really come back to bite you.
Well, and the because you don't know how to fix it, and we're in a society where still very often men are trained to fix, not listen, not hear, but fix.
Mhm.
So particularly if you've got like a father or a brother, they want to fix it, and they're mad at the person who's being harmed for staying in it. Why didn't she fix it, or why didn't she tell? And the other piece about that I just want to add is that if you've grown up in a household where there's been violence, then it may not be a matter of creeping up on you. It may be that's just how it is, and it never occurs to you that it could be any different. Is that the case
Absolutely.
in Blackbirds, or did she have a different experience?
I think she had a different experience. Kim met this guy Larry, and when they were relatively young in their 20s, and it's interesting that you bring that up because there's a point in the book where she's at the towards the end where she's reflecting on the situation, and she remembers, this is where that denial piece comes in again.
Yeah.
She remembers that a long time ago,
Mhm.
close to the beginning of their relationship, he hit her. And she completely forgot about it.
Yep.
Completely forgot about it. And it never happened again until like 8 years later when having the baby just kind of was the straw that broke the emotional camel's back for him. She remembered that. And so here it's, I think where I'm going with this is her reflection is, if I had said something at the time, if I had said, you can't do that, how would things have turned out differently for me? And Pamela, here's the more important part. How might things have turned out differently for him? Maybe. See, maybe, and here we go. We're not trying to fix people,
Right.
but if you're standing on your own 2 feet
Right.
and you're advocating for yourself and you respond to somebody, you're not in control of how they take that in, digest that, and integrate that, and maybe make a change in their life. But you've done all you can to make that possible for them. Whether they take that up is up to them.
Absolutely. And there's so much complexity, if you will, to the experience of violence, because it's real easy, even in that scenario. Well, I wonder if I had said something differently, to say, oh, this is my fault. I should have stopped this from the beginning.
Right. That's the culture of shame and guilt, and
Yes.
that's got to go. And that's why people like you do what you do, and people like me do what we do, because we want to open up the conversations,
Yeah.
shine the light of day on the situation, and make it, it's the word isn't normalized, but make it okay for people to come forward and talk about things that are difficult. You know, if you approach a topic, if you approach any issue in the right way, in a good way, in a positive way, in a beneficial way, then it can only elevate you and elevate your conversational partner. For me, my conversational partners are the people who are reading my book. You know, they're like reading and they're like talking to me, and it's a wonderful communion.
Let me ask you this, switching gears a little tiny bit, but actually not really.
Mm-hmm.
Children, when there is a child in the relationship, again, there are people who are going to say, my gosh, she had a child, she should have left. And then there are those children who grow up blaming themselves for not having defended the person. I mean, it just gets to be so complicated. Can you speak to that?
Yes, it's so complicated when children are involved, and that the presence of a child or children in the relationship can be a significant factor in a woman deciding to stay, paradoxically enough. But domestic abuse, whether it's physical or emotional, impacts the whole environment of the home. And you can't tell yourself it's okay because Joey was in bed in the crib in the other room when
Right.
so and so
Right.
pushed me around.
Right.
It's an atmosphere, and children pick up on more than you think. And so, you know, good for you.
Smart.
Yeah, good. The children are very smart. Okay, so real quick, there's a point in the book where Kim's aunt is reading nursery rhymes to the baby, and Kim's like, oh, can he understand? And the aunt, of course, with her mature years, she says, of course they pick up on everything. They pick up on more than you think. And Kim has just left an abusive marriage, and she's like, oh my God, you know, he imbibed that atmosphere. He felt that environment. And Pamela, how much worse is it for children who are older and who kind of really understand what's going on? So it makes it difficult to leave, but it makes it even harder to stay. And the most important thing to break that cycle, that you have to break the pattern of intergenerational violence, if that's what was going on. The most important thing is for children to know the unvarnished truth, for them not to live the lie, not to have this whole thing fobbed over. You have to say to children, this happened, I'm sorry it happened, and it was not okay. If they understand the truth, they will recover. Because children, like you said, they're smart, they're resilient. Children are very resilient.
They will recover, and it's important for the person who has been abused to not only say, it was not okay for you, my child, but it
Mhm.
was not okay for me, the parent. And that's why we're not where we were. I'm going to ask you a question that is impossible to answer in its entirety, but I'm going to give you a shot anyway because
I
I
love
don't
that
know.
kind of question.
Are there drop dead clues that say to a person, I think this might be an abusive situation, or are they subtle? Either way, are there some examples?
I guess they're both, but I think a lot of times they're subtle because an abuser wants a relationship where he can control.
That's right.
Okay, so as the relationship kind of develops, he'll do these. I'm using he subtle
Yes,
bullying things like making up an imagined slight, like that you did something wrong and that that didn't happen, but to see if you'll apologize for it. You see,
right.
buy into his paradigm. Always be the one in charge of everything that happens. Like if he never asks you what you want to do this coming weekend, there's no reciprocity there. There's just a desire to control. Um, those kinds of things. Those are subtle, and you see them. Oh, putting you down.
Yeah.
Not
And
just
there
not
and there
just
are lots of
in
ways to
public.
really put people down.
Ooh,
Forgive me for
absolutely.
interrupting you, but our time is
No.
really sort of getting away
Yes.
from us
Yes.
already, but I gotta have you come back. I'm gonna put you on
Oh,
the
I would love to, Pamela.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Before we end today, though, I mean, you've made such critically important points. It can be subtle in the beginning. It's typically subtle in the beginning, unless you've grown up in that environment. And then sort of the horror is just normalized and it seems like it's okay. But most abusers don't say, hello, I'm an abuser. I'm going to make your life a living hell. So come stay with me. It is
Right.
absolutely subtle.
Right.
I'm going to ask you to tell us very quickly, where can folks get more information about the book?
Uh-huh. Okay. Seven Blackbirds is coming out on September 23rd. It's starting to pop up on platforms like Amazon and Barnes and Noble,
Okay.
independentbookstore.org. So you can try finding it there. My website, which is my name, helenwinslowblack.com, is my lovely web designer Mira Lee, who's the mother of two lovely children, is going to get around to updating my website as this week. So there will be the cover of the book and some advanced reviews. You can look on the website. I also have a Facebook author page. Got to do more with that. So it'd be Helen Winslow Black, comma author. Yeah.
And Helen is spelled the way we typically think
Yes.
about Helen, spelled
The way we
Winslow.
typically spell Helen, and then
Mhm.
Winslow is Winslow, and then Black is in the color. HelenWinslowBlack.com.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Helen, I have to thank you so much for joining us today. I am holding you to this. I am wanting you to come back, and
I
hopefully
would
it'll be real soon.
I would love that, Pamela. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And
Mm.
folks, thank you for joining us today. I'm hoping that you really enjoyed today's program. Certainly found it as profoundly helpful and thought-provoking as I did.
Mm.
We'll be back next week, so don't go away, folks. I hope to see you again next week. Well, folks, I'm Pamela Brewer, and this brings us to a close of this edition of M.E.S.H. I really want to thank you for joining me today here at M.E.S.H, where your mental, emotional, and social health is always on the agenda. I hope today's conversation has been helpful. And if it has, I'm going to ask you to hit that subscribe button and share this conversation with someone you care about. I'll be back next week with another conversation about all the pieces of our lives that shape our mental, emotional, and social health. And one more thing I want to remind you of. Not your job to read someone else's mind. I don't care if you've been together for 100 years. Not your job to read someone else's mind. It's not their job to read yours. Don't assume. Ask questions. You take care. See you next week.